Politico is calling the conflict Trump's moment of truth. Quote, "It's hard to overstate the significance of this moment. American involvement in this war could end Iran's nuclear ambitions and even topple its autocratic government, reshaping the Middle East for decades to come." The New York Times with this headline, "Trump's Iran choice, last chance diplomacy or a bunker-busting bomb." KT McFarland, former Deputy National Security Advisor to President Trump, is here. And I know you have had many of your children, grown children, serving in the military, and you have a lot of experience at these points in time when presidents are making these types of decisions. What stands out to you, the president in with his advisors today?
Look, I've been in the Situation Room with President Trump where he's had to make decisions like this. He is really good. This is his finest moment. He's cool. He gathers intelligence. He doesn't get the yips. He finds out from his military leaders, his diplomatic leaders, his intelligence leaders, what are his options, and then he probably thinks of 2 or 3 other options that nobody else has thought of. So what am I looking for right now? President Trump has said it pretty well. Iran's not going to get a nuclear weapon. And then he said, well, let's wait and see. President Trump, I don't think he needs to make the decision right now of whether to attack Fordo, whether not to attack Fordo. Who knows what the Israelis have? We know that the Israelis have commandos on the ground in Iran. Maybe there are other ways to destroy that nuclear weapons site other than bunker-busting bombs that American military drop.
Yeah, and I see you focusing on that because that Fordo is exactly what people are saying. If you don't take that out, you don't take away that pause in future capability. I want to get to this, because sometimes our assets can be enough for an enemy to see, and they are on the move. The USS Nimitz, which is the oldest active U.S. aircraft carrier, deployed from the South China Sea yesterday, headed toward the Middle East. Dozens of Air Force refueling tanker aircraft have been moved to Europe to position closer to the Mideast, giving President Trump and the CENTCOM commander more tactical options. And it's just part of the United States' effort to shift military resources, including ships to the region, as tensions are obviously escalating. So you've got that on the move, and that in itself sends a signal. Your thoughts, KT?
Yeah, I was in the Reagan administration working at the Pentagon the last time the United States and Iran came anywhere close to a military conflagration, shall we say. I mean, Iran was trying to do things in the Gulf, and the United States Navy just stopped them cold. And a lot of the senior leadership now of the Iranian military would have been the young military officers in the 1980s when that happened. They would certainly be aware of it. I don't think they want to tangle with the United States because, as President Trump has said, you know, don't mess with Americans. And he said it whether he's talked to the Taliban, whether he's talked to the Russians, whether he's talked to anybody. You harm the hair on the head of one American, and then we're coming to get you. So that's got to be a huge deterrent, especially for a leadership which is probably under a certain amount of internal stress. I mean, if you're the Ayatollah, if you're those generals, you've got to look at the guys to your left, to your right. Mossad has thoroughly integrated and infiltrated a lot of the military in Iran and the leadership in Iran. They've got to worry about their own job security.
I thought it was interesting and just supreme strategy, if you will, if you just are watching this from that perspective, to put the message out that there was some thinking about taking out the Ayatollah Khomeini. And then President Trump thought, no, we won't. I mean, that is a huge sign of, well, we could if we wanted to, but we won't right now. So more of that in their heads as you're talking about. Fox News contributor and former Reagan administration official here, Hugh Hewitt, may have known you, KT, says what we are seeing in the Mideast right now is truly a historic moment.
Israel has unleashed a shock and awe campaign, the likes of which Iran has never experienced. President Trump has allowed this to happen. He greenlit this. He was masterful in his ambiguity last week, though he dropped a few breadcrumbs if people were paying attention along the course of last week, indicating he thought the negotiations were going to fail. He gave Iran 60 days. He said it again and again. Those two men, Netanyahu and Trump, have arranged for Iran to feel jolts of the sort they have never felt before, and Israel has methodically reduced all the threats, and now they're going to reduce the threat from Iran.
KT, your reaction?
You know, the other part of this equation is not only has Israel and the United States taken out all of Iran's defenses, Iran's now defenseless, but who hasn't been playing in this game? What other big powers who we know are interested in the Middle East who you haven't heard anything from? Russia, China. A couple of weeks ago, President Trump said, after his phone call with Vladimir Putin, he said, maybe Putin can help me in the Middle East. Nobody paid any attention to that. But is that phone call on the way?
You know, what's interesting, real quickly before I let you go, and I said this atop this hour, we took it live when the president said it yesterday from the G Summit before he left early. He was calling then to pay attention to the fact that Russian President Vladimir Putin was not at the table making it a G8. He talked about the dismantling of getting Russia out when Obama was president and how the former Prime Minister of Canada, Trudeau, had worked to make that happen. And that goes along with what you're saying. Look, he's watching this with a Gestalt view, looking down and saying, what pieces would help me put this together? Perhaps he and Vladimir Putin would have talked at that summit had it truly been a G8.
Yeah, and also remember, President Trump is looking way beyond what happens in the Iran-Israeli conflict. He's looking at what happens next in the Middle East. Is there peace? Is there a nuclear weapon? Does anybody get nuclear weapons? But also, what happens to Iran afterwards, the day after?
KT McFarland, good to have you. Thank you.